Monday the 28th of January, one very important question. Do you wonder if Nikki Haley has Elise Stefanilk's number?
Oh my god, she's so annoying. Who is?
Or there is any way that Elise Stefanilk can be contacted? If you had a chance to tell Elise Stefanilk Trump is in mental decline, if she was to ask you, is Trump in mental decline, would you say yes or no? Please vote now just by pressing the like button below for yes. Is Trump in mental decline? Because Elise Stefanilk perhaps needs an answer to that, perhaps needs some survey. Nikki Haley's made her mind up, by the way. Over to you.
We have a man who is totally corrupt and the worst president in the history of our country, who is cognitively impaired. We are an institute in a powerful death penalty. Trying to debank you, we came up with a new couple of words for corn. Your climb, they call it climate. Ding, 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 ding. Forts. Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people. Soldiers. Okay. Totally incoherent. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's the leader of Turkey, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Sioux Falls. Sioux City. With Obama, we won an election that everyone said couldn't be won. Obama dropped missiles, and they ended up hitting a kindergarten. If that's the case, he's going to end up being indicted when he leaves office. They're leaving by a lot, including Obama.
But you have said that you think Trump has cognitive disorders. Do you think age and mental acuity are fair lines of attack for either of them?
Let me just say this, because I, with all due respect, don't think we can put aside the substance of what he was saying when he was talking about Nikki Haley and me. Anybody can get a name mixed up. 7 times is kind of a lot. But the fact is, he was lying about the fact that he would not send the National Guard to the Capitol when Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and Nancy Pelosi were begging him to do it all day, begging the Secretary of Army and the Secretary of Defense, acting Secretary of Defense, to call upon the President to do that, making that appeal to him. He refused to do it, causing death, damage, destruction, defecation, and all the rest. Disrespect for our Constitution, our Congress, and our Capitol. So it wasn't about, let's put aside what he was talking about. He was lying about what he didn't do. And he was saying Nikki wouldn't accept his 10,000 troops, which he wasn't sending. But it was me that was asking him.
Yeah, and I understand why you wanted to make
him. That's just one of many steps. In New York State alone, for example, Democrats are trying to rig and cheat and illegally gerrymander districts. We are standing strong for election integrity in New York as well. So we need to focus on all efforts to make sure that this is a secure and constitutional election.
Donald Trump has called on you to get out of this race. The RNC says it's time for Republicans to unify around Mr. Trump. What is your response to this apparent pressure campaign against you?
Look, I mean, he can't bully his way through the nomination. I think that, you know, it's not surprising that he is surrounded by the political elite, but let's keep in mind the political elite has gotten nothing done for us in stopping the wasteful spending, has gotten nothing done to secure the border, has gotten nothing done to keep us more safe as we see wars around the world. And so, look, that's exactly what we don't want. I mean, the reason the political elite are upset and the members of Congress are upset is because I've pushed for term limits. I've pushed for a mental competency test. I've said if they don't get a budget out on time, they shouldn't get paid. So, look, I have fought this political class my entire life, and I'd much rather be fighting for the people than fighting for the elected officials in D.C.
I want to hit one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
You stated flatly after the 2020 election that Joe Biden is the legitimate president, saying, of course he is. Donald Trump denies that. 31% of Republicans think Biden's election was legitimate. Does that concern you for the Republican Party, that they're denying something you said was true?
Listen, I would love to spend, if we have an hour to chat together, I'd spend lots of time breaking down who believes what. Here's what's more important.
I just broke it down, who believes what. We know what you believe, we know what Donald Trump believes.
It's your show, and you get to decide what we talk about. I will simply say that the American people are more concerned about tomorrow than they are yesterday. And because of that, the race that we're seeing coming to light today is Joe Biden's 4 years versus Donald Trump's 4 years. We don't need to litigate what happened in 2020. What we should be focusing on, what I'm focusing on, is what's going to happen in 2024 and beyond for one reason. As a kid who grew up in poverty, in a single-parent household, the one thing I wondered in the poorest communities in North Charleston was, what is the American dream real for a kid like me? In today's America, the devastation of crime and chaos is eating the lunch of too many poor people living in tough neighborhoods. I want to make sure that we have law and order and opportunity, abundant opportunity for all Americans.
Okay, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
That's just one of many steps. In New York State alone, for example, Democrats are trying to rig and cheat and illegally gerrymander districts. We are standing strong for election integrity in New York as well. So we need to focus on all efforts to make sure that this is a secure and constitutional election.
That your candidate, former President Trump, was ordered by a jury to pay $83 million for defaming writer E. Jean Carroll. He was also found before, as you know, liable for sexual abuse. Does that give you any pause in your support?
You know, myself and all the voters that support Donald Trump supports a return to normalcy as it relates to what affects their kitchen table. The average person in our country, Martha, they're not talking about lawsuits. As a matter of fact, what I have seen, however, is that the perception that the legal system is being weaponized against Donald Trump is actually increasing his poll numbers.
I understand that, but they were jury trials. They were jury trials. They started when Donald Trump was president. That gives you no pause whatsoever.
I don't have the Democrats don't pause when they think about Hunter Biden and the challenges that he brings to his father. The one thing I think the electorate is thinking about most often is, how in the world will the next president impact my quality of life? How will America regain its standing in this world? They were better off under Trump, and they're looking for 4 more years of low inflation, low crime, low unemployment, and high enthusiasm for our country. We haven't had that in the last 4 years.
I spoke to a lot of voters. I want you to listen to a bit of Donald Trump's speech after his win in New Hampshire.
You know what? Look at my African American over here. Look at him.
Okay, you can't.
I just love you.
No, that's good. And when I watched her in the fancy dress that probably wasn't so fancy come up, I said, what's she doing? We won.
He has also called Haley a bird brain, questioned whether she has the right to run for president because her immigrant parents were not yet legal citizens. How does that attract independents? How does that attract people who voted for Nikki Haley?
Well, here's what I can tell you. Both candidates and all candidates should focus on the issues without any question. When Nikki Haley talks about the president's age and a competency test, I think that turns off senior voters. It's one of the reasons why.
But go back to Donald Trump. I want to talk about Donald Trump.
Well, it's one of the reasons why senior voters support Donald Trump. Here's what we should ask ourselves, and I'm asking myself.
Please answer the question about him calling her a bird brain. You worked with her. She appointed you a senator. Do you like that kind of language?
His language is far more provocative than mine, but this is not about simply my opinion of one candidate. I also think that talking about someone's age is inappropriate when especially they are competent, qualified, and ready to go to be the next president of the United States. And by the way, Martha, Republican primary contests are Republican primary contests. 70+% of Republicans in New Hampshire supported the president. This race is over from a primary perspective.
Okay.
We should turn our attention to Joe Biden. The economy is devastating for poor Americans.
Would you rule out endorsing him as a nominee?
I'm not even thinking about endorsements, Kristen. I know that y'all want to talk about what happens if. I'm focused on defeating Donald Trump. Period. That's it. I don't think past that. I'm not thinking past South Carolina or Super Tuesday. What I want to do is go and save this country. We have a country to save. I'm determined to do it. Y'all can think forward. I'm focused on the sweet people of South Carolina and making sure that we get them their voices heard. And we're going to work this state as hard and as fast as we ever have.
All right.
He should be president.
Ambassador, you bring up his attacks. I want to ask you about his attacks against you. He has mocked your birth name. He has suggested granted, you're not eligible to be president because your parents weren't born here. Of course, you are eligible. You were born here. But I'm curious, just big picture, what do you make of him bringing back this birther playbook against you? Do you think it will work in South Carolina and win over voters there?
I mean, honestly, Kristen, I laugh every time I see one of his tweets, every time I see him throw a temper tantrum, because I know Donald Trump very well. When he feels insecure, he starts to rail, he starts to rant, he starts to flail his arms, and he starts to get upset. When he feels threatened, he starts to throw all kinds of things out there. I would always tell him he was his own worst enemy. He's proving that right now. He proved it in the fact that he continues to be chaotic. Those things don't hurt my feelings. This is not personal for me. What is personal for me is getting America back on track.
Would you go so far as to call those attacks racist, Ambassador?
I think that's for everybody else to decide. I think that they, you know, the fact that he continues to go down these paths of saying things, you know, is this who we want as a president? Is this who we want our kids to see? I don't think so. And look, he's just going to become more unhinged, Kristen. Hold on. It's going to get worse, because that's what he does when he feels like he's not in control.
All right, let's talk about the court cases. On Friday, a jury ordered Donald Trump to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $83 million in damages for defamation. As you know, this was a year after a different jury found him liable for sexual abuse. You have said, and you repeated here, maybe it's fair, maybe it's not. But let me just ask you on the substance of the jury's ruling, should that be disqualifying to be president?
I think the American people decide who should be disqualifying. I've always thought it's the same thing with the RNC picking the nominee. We don't need to take over anything that the American people have the right to do. I think that I have always said I think Donald Trump has the right to be on the ballot. I've always said I trust the American people. They know how to make good decisions. And so I think that they're going to see this for what it is. They see that he's completely distracted. They see that he's going on these rants about how he's the victim. And I think that's exactly what we don't need a strong leader to be. And so, you know, these court cases are going to keep happening one by one. We're going to keep seeing him in a courtroom, and we're going to see him come out and do a press conference. That's not what you want a president to be. But more than that, that's not what we want Russia to see. That's not what we want China to see. And that's not what we want Iran to see.
And what is unique about this case is that the jury has now ruled. They have found him liable of sexual abuse. Do you not trust the jury and their findings, Ambassador?
I absolutely trust the jury, and I think that they made their decision based on the evidence. I just don't think that should take him off the ballot. I think the American people will take him off the ballot. I think that's the best way to go forward, is not let him play the victim, let him play the loser. That's what we want him to do at the end of the day.
Just to be clear, do you think it's disqualifying, Ambassador?
I don't think he should be taken off the ballot. I think the American people will decide if he's disqualifying or not. We don't do that, Kristen, in America. Anybody that wants to run can run. And I think that's really important. We've said
his advanced age makes him unfit. You have just now called him unhinged. Why give him a pass on this issue where a jury has found him liable for sexual abuse?
I'm not giving him a pass on anything. I mean, I have said, you know, he went on for 3 or 4 minutes talking about how I didn't secure the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, clearly he was confused, thinking that I was Nancy Pelosi. But look, that's exactly why we don't need 2 people in their 80s running for president. We need someone who can serve a strong 8 years to get our country back on track. You can't do that with him. And I think it's not being disrespectful. It's the fact that when you're 80, you are declining. That's just a fact. And so, look, there are multiple things that I think are the reason he should not be president. That's the whole reason I'm running. I do think that he is in decline, and I think that he needs to know to step away. I do think that he surrounds himself in chaos, and we can't be a country in disarray and have a world on fire and be in chaos. I do think that these court cases are distracting, not just to the American people, but to him himself, which is keeping him from talking about what really matters. That's exactly why I don't think he should be president.
Plane just coming in, and we are watching it taxi down this runway as it will head into the Signature Air tarmac area right here that we have been showing you all evening long as we anticipate the former president to deplane and then make his way to the Fulton County Jail.